I think through seed keeping, and I think this being in a relationship with plants in any way can serve as a homecoming for anyone. It's like an invitation, I think, almost to do this and to see what it conjures within you. Asking myself those questions, it felt like who do I belong to and where do I belong?
Welcome to episode 61 of the Seed Farmer Podcast, the podcast where I want you to harvest seeds from some of the vegetables and flowers growing in your farm or garden, and then to plant that seed out to grow delicious vegetables and beautiful flowers. If you enjoy the Seed Farmer Podcast and find it to be a good resource that helps you improve your seed work and farming, please support the show at spreadsheet.farm/support podcast. I'm your host, Dan Brisebois, seed grower at Turnesol Cooperative Farm and author of The Seed Farmer, a complete guide to growing, using, and selling your own seeds. And we got another interview today, but first, news. Or maybe more of an update. This update is from a couple of weeks ago. I've been telling you about my new book coming out this fall. It's called The Profitable Farmer, and I co-wrote it with Julia Shanks, and it's coming in November 2026, and I can't wait for you to read it. Now, one challenge writing this book is that we needed to have a picture of the two of us together. And the only two pictures we had, one was from the Guelph Organic Conference where we had both presented together a presentation that ultimately became the Seed Farmer book. We didn't know we needed a picture at that point of us two. And if we had, we wouldn't have included Zach Lokes standing right between us. I'm not sure whether Photoshop could have fixed that. Now, not that there's anything wrong with Zach Lokes, just in the picture is the problem. The other is from when Julia came up to the old mill to record an interview with the Market Gardener podcast. We had supper together the night before, and we took a quick picture on the way out for the socials. A bit blurry, a bit dark, maybe okay for an Instagram story, but not ideal for the book. We needed something a bit better than either of these two. So we decided to meet up near Burlington, Vermont, to take a picture together. That's halfway-ish between where both of us live. It was easy enough to find a photographer, but trickier to know where to take the pictures. So I reached out to Taylor Mendel of Footprint Farm just outside of Burlington. Taylor runs a project called Habit Farming that tries to move farmers out of crisis management mode by building sustainable systems. And I've been emailing with Taylor back and forth for a few years, but we've never met in person. So I wrote her an email that started off, "This is a funny request, but could we use your farm for a photo shoot?" And Taylor said yes. So Julia and I both drove to Taylor's farm, and we took some great pictures, and the farm was beautiful. Some lovely, lovely greenhouses, some lovely, or maybe I guess I should say lovely tunnels with, at this time of year, in this part of the world, it's still snowy and cold outside, so it's just really great to see lush green inside tunnels. So we took the pictures, and then afterwards we had lunch with Taylor and Jake, and we talked about all kinds of things farming and all kinds of things habit farming and profitable farming and all that. So it was fun to make friends, and it was great to have a picture. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of those pictures of Julia and me at some point in the future. Now let's get into today's conversation, which also takes place in Vermont. Charlie Watt is this episode's guest. Charlie Watt runs Homecoming Seeds in Northfield, Vermont. His seed journey began in Montana under the mentorship of John Austin, a connection that eventually led Charlie back to his roots in the Northeast with a suitcase packed with high-altitude adapted seeds. In this episode, Charlie shares the messy middle of scaling a seed business from a home garden to a production farm. We discuss the steep learning curve of his first year, including winning a venture capital pitch competition and the logistical hurdles of seed contracting. Charlie also reflects on the meaning of a seed company's name and how seed work is a homecoming for anyone looking to deepen their relationship with the land. In the deep dive, Charlie and I get into growing eggplant seed, a crop that has frustrated both of us. We cover when to harvest, how to speed up eggplant seed extraction, and the mysteries of eggplant germination rates. One note about the conversation: this took place during a windstorm, and around 2/3 of the way through, I lost power and had to shift to have the conversation without my mic, so the audio quality might be a little bit impacted. Nonetheless, it's a great conversation, and enjoy that conversation. Hi, Charlie. Welcome to the Seed Farmer Podcast.
Thanks, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here. My honor.
I'm really looking forward to getting to know you better. And why don't we start with your seed story?
Yeah, sure. Well, I did not grow up gardening or farming, but I did grow up in a household that really valued food and eating. So from an early age, just really, yeah, it was important. Like flavor was important. My grandmother was a big flower gardener, but not really involved with any veggie gardening until my neighbor in high school would bring over bags of cucumbers and tomatoes, which kind of introduced me to kind of like the bounty of a veggie garden. So the story probably goes with a lot of people while I was in college, where I started to become more interested in my food and where it came from. And I went vegetarian and, yeah, just started to kind of pay more attention to the food system. I was a biologist and involved in ecology was kind of where I was being drawn to academically. And in my last semester of college, I took a class on sustainable agriculture. It's actually where I also met my wife. We learned about, I had two different professors from different disciplines who were a really great pair in talking about all things food system. And this is in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. So we had the opportunity to tour local farms and spend some hours interning at a local farm. So that was kind of my first farm experience. After college, I was pretty burnt out on school, and I was also a big skier. So I was like, I need to take a break from academia and working so hard. I'm going to go skiing, be a ski bum. In the winters, I would ski, and then in that recent experience of working on a farm and just loving to be outside, I thought farming was a really good seasonal complement to my skiing habit. So for the next 4 years after college, I would work on organic veggie farms in the summer in New Jersey, where my wife lived, and then later in Utah in some urban farms. And yeah, it was a little bit down the road that I got tired of serving tables in a restaurant at a ski lodge and being a farmhand because there's only so much growth that you can have as a farmhand, and decided to go back to grad school. And I was really interested in my interest had shifted from kind of ecology to agriculture. I had really loved the farming work that I was doing in the summers, um, partially as being outside all day and as an eater, growing the food and cooking and interacting with the food that way, and also as an ecologist, learning about the best types of farming system, the most sustainable types of farming systems are, ecologically based too. So I was kind of scratching all of those itches in a way that really enriched me, I think. And so I was interested in going to grad school. I also had in mind, like, I hope everyone has had the experience of having a transformational teachers, those teachers in your life that really just change the way you think or have a really profound impact on you. And I was lucky enough to have a number of those experiences in my life. And one of them was in that sustainable farming class where I had two teachers from different disciplines really making things interesting for their students. Part of that was experiential learning and interdisciplinary perspectives. And so I think my intentions going into grad school was to learn more about farming and to set myself up for a career in academia. I used to think my professors had the coolest jobs ever. So, I went to move to Bozeman, Montana, and entered into an interdisciplinary PhD program in plant sciences and education, where I was working and studying and doing research at the organic student vegetable farm, looking at organic soil fertility amendments in high tunnel cropping systems. So looking at different nitrogen nutrient mineralization rates for different organic amendments in tomato and cucumber high tunnel systems. That was kind of like the technical parts of my research. And I was also getting teaching experience in the classroom and on the student farm, and doing research in the classroom, looking at the effectiveness of different active learning techniques, and then trying to document the student experiences on an organic veggie farm. So, yeah, I think those were pretty formative experiences in kind of my story. And now kind of getting to the seeds. Yeah, that may be a little long-winded, but it was September, I think, of 2019. I was giving a presentation about my high tunnel tomato research to a senior gardening club. And a gentleman walked up to me afterwards and was like, "Oh, it's nice to see a young person interested in tomatoes. I have a tomato seed collection that I've been working on for many years." Um, and he showed me he told me about these like big tomatoes he was growing outside in 4,600 feet in the foothills of the Bridger Mountains. And we had a short chat, and I was like, "Oh, that was cool." And someone walked up to me afterwards and was like, "Hey, that's John Austin. He has the nicest gardens in the whole valley." So we made a point to go visit him in his gardens, and take a tour. And that was the spark of a really close and deep relationship that I had with this guy named John. He was nearing 80 years old, and just was a seed keeper for 40 plus years, just doing the quiet work of it in his basement. He listed on the Seed Savers Exchange, but didn't do much in the way of getting getting the word out or propagating at a scale, to share it in many other ways. And we would just get together. I think, well, first of all, I was really interested. He was the kind of person that could recall stories about the varieties or their histories or the details of where he got the seeds, off the top of his head for hundreds of different varieties. And so we would talk about seeds in the winter in his basement. He became a teacher and mentor for me in ways outside of seed keeping too. Yeah, we'd talk about kind of life, the universe, everything. And in the summer, as he was getting older, I would do some of the heavy lifting in his garden. And we did this for a few years. And yeah, he had been working for quite a long time on a few different seed collections. He had been adapting seeds to cold, short growing seasons. So a lot of the vegetables that are harder to mature in really cold, short seasons, like tomatoes and peppers and squash, he would just kind of select for those traits, seek out varieties, and then steward the ones that met his criteria and still tasted good. So that was really cool. He also had he spent some time managing what was called the Tinsley House at the Museum of the Rockies, which was just like the homestead museum in the valley, where it was like, I think it was like 1890, kind of like a period garden. So he went back into the seed catalogs available in 1890 and did his best to recreate the varieties of vegetables and plants that were available at that time. He's done a lot of work to document the availability of different varieties, like pre 1700s, pre 1800s, pre 1900s. He has quite a few different lists going, handwritten lists, that he's been working on over the years just out of interest. And he also spent a lot of time curating a collection of native plants. So the corn, beans, squash, and sunflowers that were native to the Northern Great Plains, the tribes in the Northern Great Plains. So yeah, that was kind of like the basis of his seed work. And I, this is all happening kind of while I'm getting my PhD, and for a number of reasons, one of them being my newfound interest in seed keeping. About halfway through my 4-year program, I was pretty certain that academia wasn't the route for me. And so I started to kind of think of what I wanted to pursue. Farming had always interested in me, with experience in like CSA and market farming. I wasn't never really like completely stoked on the market hustle that had. And I thought, oh, seed keeping has a little bit of a different rhythm, and that interests me. And then the the different kind of relationship you have with the plants as they complete their life cycle, and then the different ways you harvest and clean the seeds provided a little bit of a different rhythm to farming that interested me. And so I was like, oh, in the back of my mind, maybe I'll pursue seed farming. I think as an organic veggie gardener and farmer, I went through the ritual of opening the catalog and placing your order for your seeds for the upcoming year, but had never really given much thought to like keeping my own seeds for farm use, or just in general, like, oh, like there are farmers who grow these seeds that are in this catalog, like someone has to do that. So yeah, those ideas started to kind of sink in and interest me. And I also had some really formative experiences working with the native communities in the Bozeman area and through Montana State. We were working with a group of native folks and non-native folks to rematriate a lot of the seeds that were in John's collection, actually. So the corn, beans, squash, and sunflower was grown as a project to bring these seeds back to the original stewards. So we were working towards building an ancestral seed bank for the native community there, and we were also working towards this seed bundle project. So this was during the COVID years, when food insecurity was really stark and a big challenge. So we would take a lot of the work that John had been doing to identify vegetables that did really well in these northern latitudes, short, harsh growing seasons, and buy in seeds and then create these bundles that we sent out to the native communities in Montana. And through that experience, it was a really meaningful intercultural experience working with these communities. And as a part of that, we were invited in to participate in a lot of the ritual and ceremony around the practice of seed keeping and just the food growing practices that they held and that they were still connected to culturally. And I that was really impactful for me because it made, first of all, it resonated a lot with me. It made me feel really connected to the work that we were doing and the plants that we were growing. But it also made me feel really culturally untethered. It made me, this feeling of grief for not having that connection of my own. I started asking those questions of like, oh, who were my people and what plants did they grow? I grew up in a household that we didn't really talk about that, or maybe we were just disconnected from it long enough to not have that be a part of my upbringing. So I didn't really even know many or any of the answers to those questions. So yeah, that experience was just another spark in this kind of seed journey for me to figure out my own sense of belonging culturally, and also spiritually. The seed work has allowed me to feel more connected to the world around me, in a way of engaging with these plants. Like as a farmer, I think it's a sacred vocation in itself, because you're tending to plants, and you're feeding your community and the plants are feeding you. But as a seed keeper, you're also like taking that a little bit deeper and being with the plants as they germinate and through their entire life cycle, and kind of committing yourself to the plants that are committing themselves to you, in a way that makes me, it just brings me a feeling of wholeness that I don't think I had in other lines of work. So, as I finished my grad program, we were thinking about next steps, and at that point, I felt pretty committed to starting a seed company using my mentor John Austin's seed collection. These bioregionally cold hardy seeds, bioregionally adapted, early maturing cold hardy seeds as the foundation for a seed catalog. And we wound up deciding to move back east. Both my wife and I are from the East Coast. I grew up in New Hampshire, and Virginia, and my wife has roots in Vermont, and she grew up mostly in New Jersey. But we moved back east, so we kind of selected Vermont on the map. Part of it was because it's in the area that I grew up in, just over the river in New Hampshire. But it also has a reputation for being pretty agriculturally minded. The communities themselves, and I think the state-wise, have a lot of programs that support small and local farms. So that was enticing, and of course, the Green Mountains are at the center for good quality snow and good skiing, which was kind of one of the last times that skiing was a major driving force in our lives. We landed up in northern Vermont because it was close to Jay, and they have the best snow in the state. But we shortly after that moved down to central Vermont, where we, for the first time since moving and looking for a place to settle, really felt at home. The community of central Vermont and Montpelier and the surrounding area really drew us in. So it was within a year we landed in Northfield, which is about 10 miles south of Montpelier, Vermont. And that signaled like, yeah, this new chapter where we're starting this business, and we started a family. I have a daughter, Fia, who was born, she's a year 4 months old. So yeah, like I kind of joke about the skiing part, but yeah, much less time in my life for that now, because I'm really investing in this place, this old farm that we landed, and I'm raising my daughter, and I'm just pretty much spending my time doing that these days.
Yeah, family and farming can really have an impact on other activities for sure.
Yeah.
So you've brought us through quite a journey. So now you're starting a seed company. And I think actually it looks like you've kind of launched the seed company this winter. Am I right about that?
Yeah. Yep. 2025 was the first like real grow out at scale for me, and the catalog launched in January of 2026 this year. Yep.
So welcome on board.
Thank you.
So your seed company is called Homecoming Seeds, and then you also have a farm called Flytree Farm. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your seed growing installations or farm, or how you're set up?
Yeah, sure. I will also use this as a chance to say thanks to you, Dan, because as a beginning seed grower and farmer, your book and the resources that you've provided with some of the webinars and other, like the website that you have, has been so helpful to someone who most of the time feels like they don't know what they're doing, as far as like just being a really useful manual like the book, and then like the seed yield stuff and the kind of economics of like putting together a crop plan has been really helpful.
I'm thrilled to hear that. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is like veggie farming, and my seed keeping background is mostly just at the garden scale. So working with my mentor in Montana, and then doing some seed keeping on my own in my garden. So yeah, this like working towards the seed company was my first time kind of doing all of this at scale. We landed in on a hillside farm at 1,200, 1,300 feet. The year before, like planning to do our first grow out, I tilled and tarped a field and let that to solarize for a complete year before kind of going all like committing full time to doing my seed grow out. So it's a field that's like 100 by 130 feet. So it's, I think, not even or barely a quarter acre. And I grew on permanent raised beds that were sloped 1.5% off contour. So like I moved to Vermont like right as all of these major flooding events happened, and I was like really aware of trying to help, yeah, just like be mindful about how water is moving through the field. It's already a pretty wet spot at the toe of a slope where the water table is pretty high. So I wanted to make sure that water was like shedding off of the field, but not causing erosion, but not having them on contour. So they're acting as check dams. And that's worked really well, actually. So yeah, we're going on 50-foot beds, and I have one at the moment. I only have one plot, so like one isolation plot. So I'm not growing multiple varieties of the same species that are likely to outcross. And I threw up a deer fence around that. We're so grateful to have landed on a hillside that has water coming out of it. So there are some springs above the farm, and I very crudely buried some poly pipe in the spring-fed creek that trickled into some IBC totes that were held above my field, so that I'm just gravity feeding to my field right now for irrigation.
Like on drip tape?
On drip, yeah. Yeah, I have a little manifold with a pressure regulator and a disc filter, and then with a few valves to the different sections of the farm. But yeah, they're on drip tape. I think there is enough pressure to run sprinklers because there's quite a bit of relief. Yeah, and I put up a high tunnel, a 30 by 100-foot high tunnel last year. I didn't crop in it, but I also don't have any. I don't have any storage space, so I needed some place to like get things out of the elements. So last year and not that high tunnels are dry necessarily because they can have high humidity, but it was a place for me to drag things into if it was raining a lot or store some of the things that I had. And I will plan to crop it this year and maybe leave about 30 feet of it towards the front of it as kind of a working space.
How many seed crops did you grow last year, would you say? If you know offhand.
Yeah, I was like, I think about this so much, and I've been asked so many times that I should really know the answer to this. I think I started with like a little over 30, and I think about 20 made it to like catalog.
And are these all from John Austin's collection, or did you add some other things in also?
Yeah, so they're mostly from John Austin's collection. Since moving here, I've also developed a relationship with Sylvia DeVotz, who's also a longtime seed keeper here in Vermont. And I grew a few of her seed varieties, and this upcoming year, I plan to grow out more of her varieties as well. She had Solstice Seeds and has been a longtime seed keeper involved in the seed keeping community in New England and Vermont. So I grew some of her seeds as well, and then for a few other things I just bought. So like an eggplant and a arugula I just bought from
to round out the collection.
To round out the collection, yeah, just a few things. Yep.
How did you choose what varieties from John Austin to grow here?
Good question. That was a really hard process, but I just got on the phone with him and pretty much asked him the question, like, give me your best ones. What would you do if you could only grow one of these? What would you choose? And funny side story about this, like John was incredibly generous with sharing his seeds. I did not leave Montana with the seeds because I knew I was entering some sort of instability and uncertainty with my housing and ability to like store the seeds well. So it was only until it was when we moved to Northfield in our house that I was like, okay, John, I'm going to come visit you and take these seeds. And I spent a weekend with him and we went through his seed collection, and I wound up with a suitcase full of seeds that I just flew home with, which was one of the scariest moments of my life because I was like, do I check the bag or do I bring it on as a carry-on? And I was like looking up all these regulations, and I was really afraid they were going to take it away from me. But they didn't blink an eye, and it's completely legal. I looked up the rules, but it was like if you had opened my suitcase, you would have seen just like this insane amount of
all these baggies and other.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it was just a process of a conversation with John of a lot of the things I had known and grown through my 2-3 years of growing with John, and some of them I'm taking his word for, as far as like like give me a really early good tasting tomato or pepper. And yeah, so Montana also has a lot of similarities to the growing here, but also some differences, like namely precip patterns and humidity. So some of what I'm doing here too is like growing out some things of John's and seeing how well they do here, and seeing how they translate to Vermont, and not keeping it if it doesn't do well here, or maybe just trying it again to see what happens. But yeah, it was just the conversation of like, you're all stars pretty much.
You mentioned that your experience was more like home gardener scale in terms of working with seed, and now you were on a farm scale. How was that learning curve, like scaling up like that?
Oh, yeah, I'd say I'm still in the thick of it. And how was that learning curve? It was really hard. And you have to like, to me, I had to kind of just to let go of all expectations and just put a lot of trust in myself and in the plants, right? Because it's not just me; it's like the plants too. So, and also I had to rely on the community, like the farming community in general, but the seed keeping community even more so. It's so generous with knowledge sharing, and yeah, it was a huge learning process. I planted too much. I had too many things to do. Some things didn't even make it out of the field. Some things made it out of the field but didn't get processed. So this year I'm actually planting less because the first year I learned kind of where my capacity was. And I think we'll get to it once we start when we talk about our special crop. But I also like wasted a lot of time doing things a certain way when lo and behold there's really a lot more efficient ways to do things. So yeah, just kind of like expecting to not be like perfect at any of it was really helpful.
So you knew that you were going into a year with a lot of different learning experiences. How different did it turn out to what you expected?
It turned out better than I expected. So that's good that it was on that side of things. But the thing is like I felt confident and happy in my ability to grow things. Like I've been doing that for a while, and even beyond just like a gardening scale, like a farming scale. Like I knew I could grow the plants, but it was like the once you get to the harvesting or even like reading, like being able to determine when things are ready to harvest for seeds. And then like the harvesting and then the storing and or processing and all that stuff that was really new. And some of the things that some of the tasks and the crops worked out about how I expected as far as like time investment. I'd say a lot of things took longer than I thought they were in my head. Some things I really was just like flying by the seat of my pants and reading as many books and making as many phone calls or emails as possible to help me kind of piece together the things I didn't really know. And some crops like just did not work out at all. And I had examples of that at all different stages of seed keeping. So like from the farming part, from the storing part and the cleaning, and then like all the way to germ testing, like I cleaned some crops completely. I was like really excited about them, and then they didn't pass germ, and I'm like still scratching my head a little bit about what happened or why not. But I think it's part of it.
What's a crop that didn't pass germ, for example?
So that is just one, and it's my eggplant actually.
Oh, okay.
So perhaps we'll get to that. But I also had someone grow. Oh, yeah, and then the other ones that didn't pass germ were ones that I contracted. One was a watermelon, and one was a cosmos.
Okay. You're already contracting seed growers for you.
I am, yes. I started pretty small, and that was also a huge learning curve. The relationship, like the people part of that is natural, but the whole logistical part and the actual contract itself and figuring out the types of conversations that we needed to have that I didn't have this first year. I learned so many lessons. But I'd say I started off with like 12 varieties in contract and only three made it to the catalog.
Did they start with seed from you that you provided them?
For the most part, yes.
Some folks, when they start a seed company, they're kind of starting very small and like kind of seeing what happens. But it sounds like you have a business plan behind this.
Yeah, I do. It's been long time visioning. When I was in Montana as an alumni of Montana State University, I as a aspiring farmer, I was aware of some of the capital costs involved with farming. So I entered a pitch competition and used that as as an opportunity to take advantage of the business services that the university offers. So over the course of like 1 month, I like threw together a business plan for the seed company, and this was also knowing that this was still kind of going to be a few years down the road. But I threw together a business plan with the help of some business advisors and then a pitch deck, and then I actually won third place in this venture capital competition as like a seed company competing against like biotech and app stuff. But took home a little bit of prize money, and I actually use your one of your seed yield and tables to inform that. So just
Oh, that's awesome.
fun fact there. But yeah, I also have been working with the business services at the Intervale Center in Burlington, who offer free business advising. And I want to make a living of this. And I also, like, as a new father, and I mean, I know myself, and that, like, I know where my capacities are. And I knew that if I'd like tried to do this kind of like on the side, that I wasn't setting myself up for what I really dreamt of this being. So I like fully committed, and that obviously took yeah, there's a lot of risk, but I'm doing my best to like go about it smartly. And I also have the support of my wife, which is huge, and she has a full-time off-farm job, which is like also a really important part of the puzzle that's allowing me to do this. And we're still like, yeah, it's not easy still, but I'm still hopeful.
Well, I wish you all the best on these next steps.
Thank you.
So your seed company is called Homecoming Seeds. Is this name related to the questioning you had about who are my people and what plants did they grow?
Yeah, it is in many ways. Yeah, I think through seed keeping, and I think this being in a relationship with plants in any way can serve as a homecoming for anyone. It's like an invitation, I think, almost to do this and to see what it conjures within you. But yeah, asking myself those questions, it felt like who do I belong to and where do I belong?
If you're already a seed farmer, or even just thinking about harvesting seed from your plants for the first time, head over to seedgrowers.farm for my free seed grower resources. There is cross-pollination information, seed yield information, even a few seed spreadsheets. There's also a list of my favorite seed books and podcasts. While you're there, you can also sign up for my weekly newsletter to get seed grower tips and stories straight into your inbox. So head to seedgrowers.farm for my seed grower resources. Now, back to the show. Welcome back. So I guess for the listeners, I just lost power in a windstorm. So I lost power on my other computer. I'm off my mic, and now I'm just on the laptop mic to have the second part of this conversation. And I hope the sound quality is at least good enough. And so when I disappeared, you were telling us about the name Homecoming Seeds and about how working with seeds is a form of homecoming for anybody.
Yeah, definitely. I think in a way it's been a spiritual homecoming. I was kind of getting at this earlier too, but it's been a way for me to feel connected with the world. I think that being deepening my relationship with these plants that have committed themselves to feed us, has been a way for me to feel like I'm coming home in a spiritual sense, and then also culturally. I think it's been a way for me to tap into parts of the story that I have lost connection with. So like, what are the cultural traditions? What are the agricultural and culinary traditions of my ancestors? And how can my seed keeping and farming practice today help me feel more connected to that? So it's been a homecoming in that sense and kind of informed my own sense of belonging. So, and then and it's not necessarily funny, but like there's also a third aspect of the homecoming because I did grow up about an hour down the road from where I live now. So I'm like settling down in a place that feels like home to me, like this land, the mountains and the waters and all the forests here all feel like home to me too. So
So it's a fitting name in so many ways. I really love it.
yeah, thank you.
So why don't we switch to a deep dive and talk about a specific crop? You proposed talking about eggplants. Do you want to tell me why eggplants is one of the crops you'd love to talk about?
Yeah, sure. I like I love to grow eggplant and I love to eat eggplant. I know it's not always a super popular eating plant for folks, but yeah, I also had a tumultuous relationship with the post-harvest part of eggplant seeds. So I am kind of just putting myself out there that I'll happy to tell my story, but I'm in no way an expert on eggplant seed. So I just figured also hearing anything you had to say about my experiences and kind of adding to the conversation, it would be great.
I should maybe put a disclaimer that eggplants are one of the crops that I have had good results, but I've also had a lot of less than satisfying results. So I was hoping that you would enlighten us.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens in the end.
So why don't you tell us what's different growing eggplant to seed versus eggplant as a vegetable?
Yeah, I think the main thing is that for the seeds to fully develop in an eggplant, you let them stay on the plant past when you would harvest it to eat. Yeah, it just takes a little bit longer, and you kind of wait for the color to turn on an eggplant. So if we're thinking about like the classic purple eggplants, they kind of get a little bit more dull and brown on the plant. And I always, with most of my seed crops, eggplant included, I will cut one open just to see what the seeds look like inside before making any sort of big calls on like harvesting. Yeah, that's the main difference, I'd say.
How do you extract eggplant from a fruit?
How did I do it this year and how I will do it in the future is two different things. I wound up, so eggplant seeds are concentrated more on the blossom end of the fruit and the top, maybe third portion of the eggplant. That's like towards where it's connected to the plant. Doesn't have any, or yeah, it doesn't really have any seeds. So you kind of figure out where the sweet spot for that is, and you cut it off. And then what I wound up doing, and I can't even remember why, maybe it was a mixture of reading, yeah, suggesting, looking at different sources of how to do this. I would kind of cut a cross section in the top of the eggplant and then tear it into chunks and leave it in a big mixing bowl and then just like tear apart the fruits in my hand in a bowl of water and kind of massage the seeds out. And I did this over many hours of podcasting and audiobooks and maybe watching movies. But yeah, so I would just like take the fruit and tear them into little chunks, massage out the seeds, which is pretty time consuming. And they would mostly float to the bottom, and then I would pour off any of the chunks that wound up finding their way into the bowl. And when you do it that way, you wind up with a really clean bowl of eggplants, of eggplant seeds. There's not much chunks of like flesh in there. And then you just pour off the water and let them dry after that. I did it in like these mesh colanders or on these screens in front of a fan in one of my closets. But I went to hang out with Sylvia. So I grew 50 feet, 50 bed feet of eggplant, which was, I don't know, maybe like 8 to 12 crates of eggplant fruits or something like that. And I got to about, I think my last crate, and I had gone to hang out with Sylvia, who's a longtime seed keeper, and was just saying, "Oh, how much time I've been spending hand massaging the seeds out of these fruit." And she was like, "Oh, did you like pulse them in a food processor? Did you try that?" And I was like, "No, I didn't." She's like, "Well, you could try that. It's if you kind of pulse it and are sparing with the use of the blade, it doesn't seem to damage them, and it does a really effective job of kind of pulverizing the flesh and then separating the seeds from that flesh." In my head, I was like, I almost hoped it didn't work, so I didn't have to come to terms with the fact that I just spent so many hours doing it by hand. But yeah, I went home. I don't have a food processor, but I have one of those Vitamix blenders and I just pulsed it, and it just made this really nice mash of a mixture of flesh and seeds. I added water to that before pulsing it, and then I either in a big mixing bowl or a 5-gallon bucket, I poured that slurry and then added a lot of water to it. And through the process of a hose jostling it and then also hand massaging that slurry, you're just kind of encouraging the seeds to there's still any seeds connected to flesh, you're just kind of massaging them out. A really crude, fast job of this. And then you decant off the immature seed and the flesh from the that floats to the top in a similar way you do with tomato seed processing. And you pour off the water and you refill it, and you do this a number of times until you wind up with like clean water and mostly only eggplant seeds at the bottom. So that was a really crucial step. That was an immense time saver for me. I think I did that in like 20 minutes for a batch of seeds that would have taken me a few hours if I had done it the other way. Yeah, so after that, after they dry for, hopefully more than 2 weeks in front of a fan in my closet, I there were still some eggplant seeds that were clumped together, so I would do some like hand massaging over a screen or just in a bowl, and then I have a winnow wizard. I did invest in a winnow wizard, so I passed them through the winnow wizard as well to blow off some of the light fraction of the seed.
Did you keep your two lots separate, the ones that went through the Vitamix and the ones that went through just hand processing?
I did not.
And you said your germination rate isn't fantastic. It's not as high as you'd like it to be.
It is not. It has hovered right around the federal minimum, around like between 70 and 80%. I've been curious because this is also my first time kind of doing like mass germination testing, and I am using like the germination blotter paper, and I know eggplants can be finicky to germinate anyways, so I've done so many different iterations of having them like directly on heat, raised off of heat like 3 inches from like an upturned 1020 tray, or I've done them without heat, and I've been patient. And so yeah, and then I also re-winnowed them, and then was way more like I kept a lot smaller of a fraction, thinking that maybe there was too much immature seed in the lot that was making the germination low. So I think my only guess at this point is that like I didn't dry them properly, or I don't know. I'm also open to other ideas.
When you re-winnowed them, did that have an impact, or was it sort of the same percentage but just on a smaller batch?
It was similar. It did improve just a little bit though, but not to what I would expect. And I visually look at them, and they all look very like plump, mature uh
Mhm.
eggplant seeds.
That is kind of the challenge I've had with eggplant seeds is some lots germinating really, really high, and some lots germinating in that 70 to 80% and not easily able to get better. I do think you can heat treat them, and sometimes that can increase the germination rate a bit. But I'm saying that without looking at any of the stuff that we've done when I say that. I'm worried this is not the most inspiring deep dive,
Yeah.
but I have found eggplants a seed definitely challenging. Some people seem to have no problem with it, but the more I talk to people, the more people have had similar experience to me.
Hmm.
So I don't know if this is the secret tricky crop, and there's something to figure out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, sorry to anyone who was hoping for that like little inspiration of to know exactly what to do, but maybe it's relatable. What really inspired me to bring this up was because of that experience I had hand processing, and then finding this really simple kitchen trick to processing them in mass that I found to be really helpful. So,
And so you used a Vitamix, and I don't really know what the blade is like in that. Like I have used a food processor, and I felt like some of the seed did get damaged in it, and it may have just been it pulsed like I pulsed too much. But I
yeah.
remember like I think I wrapped the blade up with duct tape and tried to reduce it. We didn't have a dough hook to use at the time. What we do now, we have a millet wet seed extractor, and it's kind of like a dull blade that's hitting it. This is a crop that I really like harvesting with that machine because you can get a lot of seed out that's a lot quicker than a lot of other tricks. Whereas like
Mhm.
tomatoes or peppers, if I squish them or like step on them with boots, I can get to a pretty good result, still in a timely way. But eggplants definitely are more take a lot more time than other crops.
Yeah, yeah, they sure do. When you were concerned about the blade on the processor damaging the seed. Was that a visual? Could you see the seeds that were
I
scratched or scarred?
I could see that some of them were trashed. If your seeds look really nice, maybe they didn't have damage, but that's also why I asked, did you keep the two lots separate?
Right.
Because that would have given you an indicator. But if you said you had twelve bins, is that what you said of it?
Yeah,
So if you
ish.
had
Yeah.
one bin of processed like this and then 11 others, and if they were mixed in and distributed evenly, that's maybe that would drop like 2 or 3% the germination. It's not going to drop 20%,
Right.
unless that was the only good seed, or unless that was the best
Yeah.
seed that you then diluted. Maybe I should try to find some really great eggplant seed growers for the pod for future episodes.
Yes, that's the open call for those of you who can help us out here, please.
So then why don't we pivot into some of the wrap-up questions? What would you tell your younger seed growing self?
Yeah, as a listener of your podcast, I've thought about this question, unrelated to being invited to this. So I've thought about this before, and I think I will. It's like I'm hesitant to say this because I feel like a lot of people say this, but like just start, just do it, and I'll explain what I mean. And I think that like seed keeping can be both really simple and complicated at the same time. It's like kind of one of the beauties of it. It's really accessible and it can be really easy and a low lift to do. And it can also be really heady and you can get into the technical aspects of it pretty deeply, pretty quickly if you want to. And maybe some species lend themselves to that more easily. But I think what I find looking back at myself as an early seed keeper was that like when I didn't know how to go about something, I would turn to books or online resources and I would find maybe people saying slightly different things or suggesting ways to do things that I couldn't mimic or manage the way that they did. So I would use that as an excuse to like, oh, I don't have the conditions perfectly, or I don't have like the perfect plan to execute this, so I'm not going to do it, or I'm going to like expect it not to not work. And then I think letting go of that feeling of needing to have everything planned or to have everything right from the get-go has been really freeing and allowed my a lot of my learning to happen like as I go from the plants themselves and the process and learning to happen on like a longer scale. So like instead of feeling to like I need to know before I do it so I can grow a successful crop, I think sometimes growing a crop and not doing it right is a really good way to learn for the next time you do it. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, to just not wait until you have everything figured out to start doing it.
Yeah, the sooner you start doing something, you're going to learn. No matter, even if it's not working out, you're going to learn something that's going to help you down the line.
Yep, absolutely.
What would you say to market growers to inspire them to start growing seed?
I imagine I'm not alone in that one of the things that really draws me to farming is the dynamic nature of it, the seasonal nature, like getting to work on different things, different problems, at different times of the year and in different with different crops and species. And then as a farmer, you're not just growing plants, but you're troubleshooting all sorts of different types of problems. And that dynamic nature is like one of the things that keeps it interesting and fresh and exciting. And I think seed keeping is just another way to kind of have your farming practice be dynamic because your relationship, once you start observing and tending plants when they go through their whole life cycle, your relationship with them changes and it just becomes dynamic in a way that I think is enriching. So that's probably what I'd say.
Is there something that I should have asked you?
No, I think we covered it. I think what comes to mind is like I'm probably not the best person to ask some of these questions about. Like for me, when I think of that, I'm like, I would love to talk more about the business side of things. I've really appreciated some of the guests that you've had. The other like person starting, I think Ellen Rignell, who like also started a seed company. Like I really appreciated that episode because I it resonated a lot with me. And I think asking like as well as like the cultural and agronomic parts of like the seed discussion, like the business part of it is really interesting to me and I think important for people to know. It's like, yeah, farming isn't easy, seed farming isn't easy, and the more dialogue we have around like what it takes to be successful at it, I think is important. But I'm like, don't ask me that because I don't really know what I'm doing and I'm so new at it.
I do actually want to ask you, now that you've prompted this, you have an online store, and is this your main way of selling seeds?
Yeah, it is.
And I know you're only a few months into this so far, but is there a learning that you had this winter? Something that you've already known that you're going to go do differently next year in terms of selling your seeds?
I need reflection before I think I can fully answer that. I've been so in the thick of it, and I've also held a part-time job, and have been kind of barely staying afloat. So I'm like kind of just rounding a corner of being full-time in my seed work again. So I need to think about that. I think the farming part comes naturally. The business part for me has been fun to learn. Like I don't have much experience, but I've been enjoyed engaging in that aspect of the operations. But the marketing part has been the most challenging and I think unnatural to me. I have had some help through some marketing, like through the again the Intervale, shout out Intervale, and just supporting farmers. They've hooked me up with someone who's helped me with my marketing, and they've encouraged me to reach out to newspapers, and I've been on WCAX twice now, which each time like really brings me like waves of sales that have been really helpful. But I'm noticing like most like really a high percentage of my sales are Vermont, which is awesome. And I think it's great because I'm really kind of telling the story of like Vermont grown seeds. But I think seeds, like the seeds, the collection and the catalog that I have, and in general, seeds work on a kind of a wider geographic base too. So figuring out a way to have people be aware of me in other parts of New England, maybe in other northern latitudes, and I mean just in more places, I think would be really helpful. So yeah, still figuring it out though.
So that being said, how can people find out more about what you're doing?
It's pretty much my website, homecomingseeds.com. From there, you can find my email and phone number. I try Instagram, like I'm on Instagram, and you can follow me there. But yeah, my website has some information about what we're up to, and I'm working towards having kind of like a blog aspect of that website, and you can sign up for my newsletter because I do monthly newsletters with updates and sharing different things. I also like if anyone wants to come visit, like I do some farm tours throughout the summer. And if you're on my newsletter list, you can find out when I'm inviting people to the farm because I always like chatting about this stuff and walking around the farm with people. So
Well, thanks so much for taking the time to or spending the time with us, and have a fantastic season.
yeah, thanks, Dan. I really appreciate the invite and I'm grateful for your podcast and all the other things that you do for the community. So, been great.
And that's episode 61 of the Seed Farmer Podcast. Thank you, Charlie, for being on the podcast. I wish you great eggplant seed germination this coming year and a great growing season. If you're listening to this podcast and you're a real eggplant seed pro and get consistently high eggplant seed germination, please reach out to me. I want to know your secrets. Thank you to Sophie Sedelten for the theme music. You can hear more of their music at sophiesedelten.com. Thank you to Molly Brisebois for editing this episode, and thank you so much for joining me in these conversations with seed farmers. You can find more seed growing resources on my blog at seedgrowers.farm. While you're there, you can subscribe to my newsletter full of seed growing, crop planning, and farm spreadsheets. You can also find out where to order a copy of my book, The Seed Farmer, a complete guide to growing, using, and selling your own seed. And you can support the podcast at spreadsheet.farm/supportpodcast or follow the link in the show notes. If you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, now's the time. You wouldn't want to miss the next episode. Until then, happy farming.